You found us another edition of No Stoplights. I want to thank our sponsors, Marion University, Carolina Bank, Micky, Victor's, MPD Electric Co-op, McCall Farms, Pepsi of Florence, PLC Commercial Real Estate, and McLeod Health. As I say over and over again, without those folks, none of this nonsense would be possible. This is one of our last, probably not the last, but one of our last podcasts in this temporary studio and a property owned by Marion University. We're making a pretty big step of monetary investment and commitment to kind of go out and find our own permanent space. This is something that we are committed to. It's in a different world than what we're accustomed to doing. Dave Baker and I are partners in this, and Baker has a lot of experience in radio, and I have now a pretty good bit of experience in hosting a radio show. This is kind of a different animal. It's a podcast. I have a vision of where I want this thing to go. I'd love for it to be formatted more like a television show. You don't hear me rant about a particular subject or topic. We don't sit down and interview a guest every single podcast. There'll be kind of a hybrid of a lot of different things, and we'll get there. But the biggest next step is finding our own space, building a permanent studio, offering I don't want to say a better quality product, but a lot more diversity of opportunity. We're going to have some different backdrops, and we're going to have a fully committed camera room. I mean, there's some things that we're doing. We're excited about. None of this would be possible, once again, without these sponsors. And I mean this sincerely. I've never, ever said that we do for them what they do for us. But the one thing we have in common that I'm very thankful for is our commitment to try and make our community better. We're living in somewhat of a news desert, and that upsets me. I grew up here. I don't want anything but the best for this area, and I've watched Myrtle Beach. I've watched the Grand Strand grow like very few places in America have grown over the past 30, 40 years. I'm happy for Horry County. I'm happy for Georgetown County. I'm happy for the state of South Carolina with the tourism revenue it generates. But this is home, and I want to see home do well. And I think part of home doing well is to have some vibrancy in our media. So we're not the morning news. We're not the Post and Courier. We're not the ABC affiliate, the NBC or CBS affiliate, but I think we have more local flavor than any other media outlet. We're working together, trying to collaborate with some of the other media sources around here. It's slow going. They have board of directors and formalities. We don't have any of that here, which is probably to our benefit and not. But once again, our sponsors do this because they believe in this community. They know I believe in this community. So there's that mutual partnership with these local entities, enterprises, and businesses. And I am extremely thankful and indebted that they've agreed to kind of saddle up and help us build something over the long haul. This is a Celsius. I mean, I don't have an energy drink. This is a Diet Mountain Dew, another quality Pepsi of Florence product. And I try to not be hackish. I try to not be partisan. And I mean that sincerely. The radio show is in the niche conservative talk radio. You expect me to be partisan. You expect me to be hackish, so to speak, as I articulate a worldview and criticize another worldview. I'm very much in the libertarian Jeffersonian corner when it comes to my personal political opinions. But I try to be once again, respectful of our sponsors and them signing up to be a part of this. And I don't have any idea how many people at Marion or Democrat or Republican, Carolina Bank. I don't know. Micky, I know some of the folks. I know Rick Haverkall's real well. I know his personal political proclivities. It's not my job to tell his. But I think of these businesses, and they don't want to be associated with a political hack who doesn't know what he's talking about, nor should they. That they absolutely should not want to be associated with a political hack who doesn't know what he's talking about. But every now and then a story comes across the desk that I think deserves serious consideration, and it allows me to be more hackish and more partisan and more divisive than I like being on this podcast. I've never, ever believed it was my job on radio or in a podcast to convince you that my way of thinking is the right way of thinking. What I've tried to offer up, aside of the interviews, when we do these political-based podcasts, what I've tried to do is look the audience in the eye and say, hey, as I've explored, as I've researched, as I've learned, here's where I've landed. And obviously it's an opinion, but it's not an opinion I pulled out of thin air, nor my derriere. I mean, it's an opinion that is based on a pretty good bit of research and investigative work that I've done. I would never say investigative journalism because I'm damn sure not a journalist. I don't have the integrity necessary to be a journalist. That's when the audience at the Colbert Show laughed. When Colbert said CNN's in this for the facts, and they're covering the hard news in a way that is fair and impartial, and the audience laughs. And Colbert said, no, I don't think that was supposed to be a laugh line. But it was a lack of awareness about what Americans feel about the media in general. But I want to go back to the issue. And once again, this is it is a partisan issue. There is no denying that, because it, in my humble opinion, had somewhat of an impact or effect on the election. And I could go through polling. I spent the last hour of today looking at North Carolina, Georgia. Someone asked me this morning to critique, in my best way, North Carolina and Georgia. Why is Georgia more in play than North Carolina? I'll give you the quick synopsis. And I do this for a living, guys. I'm not an expert, but I'm very versed in some of these things I think about and I try to find out more about, and I kind of sift through the BS and get to a better place and a better answer. But someone asked me today, and this would be a nonpartisan, absolutely nonpartisan answer. Someone said, you're a Republican. Why does Trump have a better chance of losing Georgia than he does North Carolina? And the short answer is the minority population in North Carolina is 20%. The minority population in Georgia is 29%. The non-college white vote in North Carolina is 44%. The non-college white vote in Georgia is 39%. 40% of the vote in North Carolina is in the Research Triangle. That would be more liberal than North Carolina in general. 60% of the vote is in the Atlanta metropolitan area. So in 30 seconds, I just explained in a very factual way, not a partisan nor divisive way, but a very fact-based answer to why Georgia is more at risk for the Republican than North Carolina is. More minorities, less non-college whites, and a higher percentage of vote in the major metropolitan area. That bodes well for Trump in North Carolina, creates problems in Georgia. But I want to talk about something that has nothing to do with math. It's all about what I call the obsession to be in charge of government. I understand why you want to be obsessed to be in charge of government. We did a podcast a couple of weeks back, and we talk about the deep state, the cathedral. You can apply the ruling class, the managerial class, the careerist in Washington. There are a lot of examples of analogies or examples of names that can apply to the group of people we're talking about. But remember a few weeks back when we talked about the transfer, outside of transfer payments, the federal government spends $5 trillion. I think the total outlays are $7 trillion. I think $5 trillion is decided by about a couple of thousand people that work in the bowels of our federal government. So why wouldn't you want to be upset? I mean, it would stand to reason that humanity, there's a Springsteen song I quote a lot, poor man want to be rich man want to be king ain't satisfied till he rules everything. Well, I don't know about being a king or ruling everything, but being in control of $4 trillion in discretionary monies, that's damn close to a king in America. I mean, that's about as powerful and almighty as you can get if you're in control of how the allocation of $4 trillion goes about. So I understand why people and Republicans, and I'm talking about Republican Party and the Democrat Party, I am well aware and understanding, not sympathetic, but understanding of why this group wants to be in charge and that group wants to be in charge. Republicans and Democrats, $4 trillion that they get to allocate. That's a powerful, powerful position, and I refer you back to the Springsteen line. But I think this is more important than the $4 trillion. And that is, what are people willing to do? I've learned in life, it's politics, it's life in general, that we all have a stop sign. Some of us will go a short distance down the road and we get uncomfortable, we get squeezy, we don't like what we're doing, and we stop. And we self-reflect and we contemplate our actions and how do we feel about the things we're doing. And some others of us will go a little further down that road, and there's a stop sign again. And we go, hey, I probably have less integrity than the person who stopped 100 yards back, but the person that just went by me has less integrity than I. So there's a justification process that a lot of us go through. And then you've got some that will not stop under any circumstance or condition. They are loyal to that obsession to be in charge of the federal government. And they'll do anything. It doesn't matter what it is. They will lie, cheat, steal. They'll do whatever it takes to be in control. And they rationalize by saying, well, I'm doing it because I know that I am more sincere and honest and can do a better job of running the country than, in this case, Donald Trump. So I want to give you one unique example. And this is not a rumor. This is not a report. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is not a rabbit hole. Mark Zuckerberg admitted that he met with the FBI multiple times during the preceding months of the 2020 presidential election. Mark Zuckerberg publicly says now on Meta letterhead, it's not an obscure report on a laptop somewhere that may be authentic or may not. Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, Meta being the parent company, has now made it public, sent a letter to Jim Jordan, and we can debate why he sent the letter to Jim Jordan, why he sent the letter at all. I would imagine lawyers at Meta have convinced Zuckerberg you kind of sort of might need to come clean. I don't know if we have legal problems, but I think it would be much to our benefit to let the public know before Jordan digs around and finds out that, yeah, we met with the FBI at their request. Yes, we censored and suppressed certain stories. Yes, we amplified other stories. Yes, we did it because the FBI said to do it. And we, as big as we are, and as much money as I have to hire really good lawyers, I don't want no damn trouble with the federal government. I just don't. So with the FBI, Mr. Zuckerberg, can we speak with you for a second? The natural answer is, of course you can. Yes. Let me get my lawyers in here before we begin this conversation. So Zuckerberg wrote a letter to Jim Jordan, a Republican congressman from Ohio, and said, I want to come clean. I want to make it known that we did indeed meet with the FBI, and the FBI requested that we, and I'm talking about COVID-19 vaccine information, anything that was skeptical of what Pfizer was saying, anything that was a bit contrary to what the federal government was saying, the FBI said, hey, we'd rather you not allow that content to be widely shared. We would love to see you, here we go with the word, we'd love to see you censor some of that story. We don't know how effective the vaccine is. We don't know if Pfizer's telling us the truth or not, but it fits our narrative. And Zuckerberg went along. That they began kind of answering to the government in concert with Pfizer about what was allowed to be widespread and what was not, what was to be censored and what was not. Facebook has this gigantic room somewhere in the bowels of Facebook, and they're content moderators. Now, it's algorithms, it's human beings that build the algorithms, and we have no idea if there is a word or two or three or a phrase or two or three that kicks you into one category, out of another category. I don't have any idea how their algorithms work, but they do, because they build these algorithms, and the intent is to amplify certain stories and narratives and censor or suppress others. That, by definition, is censorship. And it's not that, I believe this, I think Facebook has every right to censor. I think Facebook has every right to suppress. I think Facebook has every right to violate your First Amendment right. You don't like it, I don't like it, but I don't think the First Amendment applies to Facebook in general. They are a private enterprise. They can choose what to allow to be widespread and what not. What do they deem misinformation or what do they not? That's not the concerning part to me. The concerning part to me, the alarming part to me, is that the federal government, your FBI, reached out to Facebook and said, we'd like to tell you what we think is misinformation. We'd like to tell you what we'd amplify and what we'd censor or suppress. And Facebook went along with that. And you could honestly argue, and I, once again, I don't want to be a hack. I don't want to be a partisan, but I've got a reputation of calling it like I see it. And from what I can tell, today as we see it, I've read the letter. I've analyzed the letter to the best of my ability. I know some of the backstory. Zuckerberg was on a Joe Rogan podcast. He has a few more viewers than we do. And he basically told Rogan, yeah, I kind of regret doing that. I mean, I regret sitting down with the FBI and allowing them to dictate what we suppressed, what we amplified, what we censored, and what we allowed to be widespread. I kind of regret that. But something motivated Zuckerberg to write a letter to Congressman Jim Jordan explaining that the FBI initiated the communique. The FBI initiated some of the conversation. And my argument is, look, liberal Democrats want to win. Conservative Republicans want to win. It's the nature of the business. It's a duopoly. It's a binary choice. We've talked a lot about the realities of that, the practicalities of that. Some like it, some don't. I kind of would rather see more of a parliamentarian government. I think the duopoly has failed over the last generation or two to effectively transact our nation's business. But every now and then something happens that is chilling and alarming and gets very little attention to play. And the media really, you got to look long and hard to find this story. I mean, there's not been a lot about it. There's been a story about re-indicting Donald Trump, and there's some irony here. The day after Zuckerberg's letter is made public to Congressman Jim Jordan, Donald Trump is re-indicted for a crime that has a lot to do with the presidential immunity case in the Supreme Court, and they've kind of condensed the charges. They basically massaged and manipulated the charges so they believe it fits in the smaller box of what you can charge a former president with and what you can't. My point is this, guys. I'm a Trump voter. I'm a conservative Republican. I'm probably more of a libertarian Jeffersonian. And I'm willing to do a lot to win elections. And I accept and appreciate that others are willing to do a lot to win elections. Is it the $4 trillion that you're in charge of spending? For the most part, it is. Is it the thrill of victory versus the agony of defeat? Probably to some degree it is. But I still believe there are certain things that we all should agree on. And my concern, and I guess I'm rambling against Democrats here, like a former Republican running for office, my concern is I've not heard a single Democrat in America yet condemn what the FBI did. I get what Zuckerberg did. The government pays you a visit and ask or make certain demands. You do what the government asks you to do, whether you like it or not. Elon Musk is a different animal, but he is a different animal. I mean, Elon can kind of walk to the beat of his own drum. Zuckerberg could walk to the beat of his own drum, but Zuckerberg doesn't appear to me to be as much of a contrarian, a conspiracy theorist as Elon Musk. And I've got no idea if Elon owned Facebook or Twitter at the time and the FBI would come to see him. I'd like to believe that he'd tell them, he said F off. There's several episodes in his life of when someone tried to kind of bribe him with fear, intimidation, or money. He told him to take a blanking hike, a northern Yankee word that rolls out of their mouth a lot easier than it does mine. But I want to get back to this. I understand the spirit of competition. I understand what's at stake. I understand wanting to win elections. I'd be damned if I understand how a single Democrat in America yet, and I'm being partisan, and you can call me a hack, you can call me kind of a Republican surrogate or active, whatever. You can do what you choose. But this is different. I mean, this is not spin. This is not negative ads. This is not putting words in another candidate's mouth. This is not embellishment or stretching the truth or trying to make a candidate appear one way or the other. These are federal government employees that were comfortable enough to go to a social media company that has enormous influence over what our mindsets are, what our beliefs are, what do we think is true, what do we think is accurate, who do we vote for, who don't we vote for. That's the troubling part of this. It is not that a campaign misled. It's not that this campaign lied about this campaign lied about the other candidate. They ran 30-second ads that distorted, manipulated the truth. Welcome to American politics. I mean, I wish it weren't like that, but it is. But I think we've crossed a line, guys. And I think it's not a blurring of a line. It's a clear line. I mean, you work for the FBI, and you are comfortable enough to go to Meta headquarters, to sit down with representatives of Facebook and ask them to interfere in the 2020 presidential election. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, you can couch it, you can wrap it, you can roll the dice any way you want to roll them, But 17% of Americans said had they known the Hunter Biden laptop was authentic, they may not have voted. They didn't say they would, but they may have considered not voting for Joe Biden, but rather Donald Trump. There's got to be some consensus around that, guys. If we're going to continue to practice and believe in self-government, we can't allow that to be normal. We can't allow that to happen and both parties not stand on the highest mountain in the land and yell to the top of their lungs. This can't be. We can't stand for this. Once again, there's a stop sign here. Some stop, some don't. There's a stop sign there. Some stop, some don't. Some will do anything it takes to win. And this is an employee of the federal government with enormous influence and a badge that says FBI interfering in a presidential election. And not a single Democrat to date, and this is Wednesday afternoon at about 5:10, just so you know, we record these on Wednesday afternoon normally, and up until today, I checked Twitter, I checked Meta, I checked everywhere I knew to check before I sat down and did this podcast. Today as we speak, there have not been any condemnation from a single Democrat about the FBI going to Meta and interfering in the 2020 presidential election. You've never heard me say the election was stolen. I don't have proof. I've got friends who are very comfortable saying the election was stolen. I've got other friends who say that's the biggest bunch of nonsense I've ever heard in my life. You decide. I'll let you decide on what end of the scale you're on, and probably in between the two are some statistical anomalies that don't make much sense at all. But we know now, we're not speculating, it's on Meta letterhead. We know now that the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the highest law enforcement agency in the free world, went to Facebook and said, on COVID vaccines, here's what we think you should print, or what we think you should amplify, what we think you should suppress. Facebook said, got it, done. On the Hunter Biden laptop story, we believe it's misinformation. We'd like you to treat it as misinformation, to not allow it to be reposted, to not allow it to be liked, to not allow it to be commented on. And Facebook did it. And I understand, once again, I am understanding. I'm not sympathetic, but I understand why Zuckerberg did it. I got billions and billions of dollars. The last thing I want is trouble with the federal government. The last agency within the federal government I want trouble with is the FBI. But how in God's name can good, patriotic Americans be okay with the highest law enforcement in the land being comfortable enough to go to Meta and interfere in the 2020 election? And how do we know it doesn't happen again? That's really a point I want to make. How do we know that the FBI, I expect the campaigns to do anything imaginable. I expect to hear that the Trump campaign did something that makes me disgusted. I expect to hear the Harris campaign did something that makes me disgusted. I don't want to be disgusted by the FBI. I don't want to be disgusted by career people who work in the government who have an honorable obligation to both parties, to all Americans. Doesn't matter whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. And guys, and this is why we're at a major, RFK Jr. sat down with Tucker and basically argued, and he's from the Kennedy family, historic Democrats, endorsing a Republican candidate for president. And I know we got a lot of Republicans endorsing Democrats, but I think what RFK Jr. is basically saying is that if one party supports and agrees to censorship, it's the beginning of the end. The First Amendment is first for a reason. And if you have a disagreeable opinion about the vaccine or COVID, if you have a disagreeable opinion about the Hunter Biden laptop or who should win the election or whatever, once the FBI becomes a player in that part of the political narrative, we're not the same. We are absolutely at a tipping point in America today, and I am challenging. There's some good and decent Democrats. I know there are. I know many good, decent, moral, liberal Democrats who are far more sympathetic to government than I can imagine any human being should be. But they're good, decent, and moral. Well, if you're good, decent, and moral, somebody on that side of the aisle has to speak out about the FBI interfering in the 2020 election and make damn sure they don't do it again in 2024.